All right, we're going to get started here. Welcome everybody to Peter White Public Library. My name is Marty Atkinson. I'm the Adult Programming Coordinator for Peter White Public Library, and it's my pleasure to welcome Michael Niger here for another great presentation. I just want to make you aware of some of the things that are coming up this month at Peter White. This Friday, in honor of Martin Luther King Day, which is coming up next Monday, we're going to be doing a documentary, a part of our docu-cinema matinee series. It's called I Am Not Your Negro, James Baldwin and Race in America. It's an Oscar-nominated documentary that basically envisions a book about institutional racism that James Baldwin had planned to write but never got a chance to write because he passed away. So that's this Friday. And then next Monday, even though Peter White Public Library is closed, we're still having an event next Monday, and it's going to be a Zoom event where it's a documentary filmmaker who created a film called Evanston's Living History, and it's Craig Dudnick who did that documentary, and it's a film that depicts the story of the community of Abbeville, South Carolina's struggle with the lynching of one of its most prominent citizens. And it's a really, really powerful documentary. So if you have a chance, you can tune in on Zoom. We're going to have Craig Dudnick there. He's going to screen the documentary, and then he's going to answer some questions. Lots of great other stuff coming up this month as well, including a concert by the Wallens. If you've never seen the Wallens perform, you should come to that. That's on January 25th at 7 p.m. right here. And they are sort of a bluegrass folk group, and they are so much fun. You will have a great time. And then at the end of the month, we also have a special event called, it's a book launch event for a book of poems called Undone with Wonder. It's a book by a really wonderful poet who passed away last year, Helen Haskell Ramin, and all of her friends are getting together, and we have musicians who are going to be here, and we're going to be celebrating Helen and also celebrating this new book that just is coming out of her work. And it's a fantastic book. So that will be on Monday, January 30th from 6:30 to 8:30 right here in Peter White Public Library. And so I do have those lists of events that are coming up in January and February right on that back table there. So make sure if you didn't pick one up that you can stop by and after this is over and pick one up so you know what's coming up in the next couple months. But let me tell you a little bit about Michael Niger here. Michael has been a wilderness guide for over 40 years. I just love saying this stuff. He's paddled solo from the upper Great Lakes to the Arctic Ocean. He's skied solo from the northernmost plowed road in Ontario to the Arctic Ocean. He's the author of numerous map-based guidebooks for national and state parks in Michigan. And he often teaches a rigorous 2-day wilderness land navigation class and wilderness survival class. So if you're interested in that, talk to Michael after the presentation tonight. And he's currently a certified wilderness guide and instructor for the Michigan Sierra Club. So please welcome Michael Niger to Peter White Public Library.
Thank you. Marty, thanks for the introduction, and thanks to Peter White Public Library for allowing us to be here and make these presentations. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming and participating tonight. I appreciate it. Couldn't do it without you folks. So what we're going to talk about tonight is, in fact, how many winter campers do we have here? All right, we've got a few winter campers. All right. How many people from Marquette County Search and Rescue we got here? One, plus you were
alum.
Yes, an alum, yes, okay. Well, Todd here. Todd, can you stand up for just a second? Todd's one of my partners, and we travel together, and actually there's a point in this expedition here near the end of it where in a subsequent expedition, Todd was on that one and doing a lot of point work for us, and so he's a little bit familiar with, intimately familiar with a portion of the sheet ice here on this expedition here. And Todd is like I mentioned, a member of the Marquette County Search and Rescue, and he also, we work together through Michigan Backcountry Search and Rescue on our long-range special operations group, working on long-term missing person cases and unsolved homicides between the upper Great Lakes and the Arctic Ocean. So he's also a guide with, co-guides with me on a lot of stuff, and then he also leads trips with, is it what, Now Expeditions? Now, yeah, out of Wisconsin. So you'll be seeing more of him in the future, I'm sure. And he also has, what's the group that, or the company that you have for divorce? Okay, anyway, he's doing a lot of teaching and guiding for other entities, but he's also working on his own. So when that gets going, you'll be seeing more of him in this area. So this slideshow here is about an expedition to the Arctic Ocean. We go up there regularly. We're going up there next year in a little over 13 months. And in this case here, this was in 2015 from February 1st to February 11th. And we, three of us in this expedition, there were three of us. And I say expedition is rather loosely because it's a lay expedition. In other words, it's regular people from Michigan that just go out and enjoy the outdoors. We've been doing it for a long time, so we are used to and we're equipped for really foul weather in remote areas, so it allows us to do it relatively safely and enjoy it. And in this case here, you can see this is an overview map for those that aren't familiar with, here's Marquette right here, obviously Lake Superior here. And the logistics of this, we go over to drive to Sault Ste. Marie, and then we drive up to Cochrane right here. And that's basically the, there's really, other than a logging road or something, there's not much going on north of that. And then we jump on the Polar Bear Express right in Cochrane, and we ride that right up through here. And we use that for most of our trips because it's very economical to get in and out of the bush up there. And you can take any kind of gear you want, canoes, packs, we pull sleds, so you can take those. And it's the only way into the Arctic Ocean up here other than flying. In the winter, there is an ice road, a winter road that's right in here. This year they're working on it right now. It's not cold enough up there. It's not set up yet, but it's across the Muskeg, but it runs right up in through here. So in this expedition, we went up here, and then this is, the scale of this map doesn't show it, but this was our route right in here. And this is a real old brochure for the Polar Bear Express. It's pretty cool. I like using it, but it kind of shows where our route was right in here. We got off. I've got a better maps coming up here, but this is all the old sidings and stuff, and where the section houses, where most of those are gone right now. And we got off at, I don't know if it's on your Moose River crossing is where we started this particular expedition. And this is our route right here. We got off at Moose River Station right here. And this is where the railroad crosses the Moose River right here. And then we went overland over to the Abitibi River and went down like this. And then back on the Moose River, and then we ended up going up to Quinnipihagan River. It picked the railroad up here, flagged it down. It's a flag stop railroad, and we took it back out. And it's probably one of the few trains that's flag stop trains that's left in North America. You don't need any reservations. You can just walk out to the tracks. And if the train goes by, you flag them down, you get their attention, they stop. You can get on, and it's a pretty neat train. So it's very economical because it's heavily subsidized for the Cree First Nation tribe that lives up here on the coast. It's the only way they can get in and out, so it's heavily subsidized. So like for I think the last trip we did, Todd, you were on it. What was it, like $250? From starting at Sault Ste. Marie, we shared a hotel there, and we rode together, so we shared gas. And we had another hotel we stayed together at up train fare and a few other expenses. That's pretty inexpensive for this kind of trip. Commercial trips are thousands and thousands of dollars. So, the railroad there's no roads up here because it's Hudson Bay Loan, it's all muskeg. So, I've done search and rescue up there in cases, and you take your walking stick and you push it right down. It goes right down to the handle. It's just basically muskeg floating, and there's a few ridges and stuff. So there's really nothing. The railroad is a real problem because a lot of times they can only go 20 or 25 miles an hour because there's so much settling, and there's these little shim shacks all along the railroad where they have these little pieces of wood that they come through. The crews come through regularly and they shim up because the railroad ties are settling into the muskeg. So they just pound these little shims in there underneath the railroad between the ties, and so it really limits their speed. But in the winter, when it freezes up, they do, you've heard of ice road truckers and stuff, I'm sure. So they have those kinds of roads that are either on the ice or they go across the muskeg and cross the rivers and whatnot. So this is where we started right here. We got off the train. This gray line here is the train, the railroad tracks here, Polar Bear Express. So we got off right here. And the backstory here is, right here is Medicine Island. And we were on an expedition a couple years before this. We started way up the Abitibi, like way up this way, right below 9 Mile Rapids. And we were up there, and we had like 2 weeks food with us. And they got this horrendous storm. We got 3 feet of snow, probably over 2 days. And it was just wallering in deep powder. I was on 60-inch snowshoes, and I was sinking up over my knee without a pack on. So we had to abort that trip, and we went over to an ice road to get out of there because we would have run out of food. But it was so bad that the Canadian military had a huge exercise up there. They had equipment and people all over, and it just totally shut them down. And they just went into the Cree cabins and just stayed with the Cree for several days until it passed, and then they left. So it was a big, a massive storm, and it was a really good lesson. I've been in bad storms before and always prepared for them, had extra food and everything, but this is why we have multiple routes planned. So because we would have never got out of there, we couldn't have covered the miles that we needed to cover. Fortunately, we had other plans, opportunities to get out of there that we had arranged before. And when we finally got out to the ice road, the Cree were out there, and they couldn't believe where we had come from because there's really no one out there in this bush other than you'll see Cree on the river and stuff, fishing and trapping and whatnot, running their snowmobiles back and forth. And but other than that, you really don't see them because there's really no reason to be out there. And this is for those that have traveled up in Canada. This is the height of land here, the Arctic watershed, where everything, in this case, this is one of our partners here, my partner, Chris Latta, and everyone likes to have their picture taken here, and I've had my picture taken there. It's a pretty interesting spot. And you guys canoe up there, you've probably seen some of these signs, right? Yeah. And so it's the first time you see it, it's kind of interesting. And this is in Cochrane. This is this might be Moosonee, I can't remember where this is, but this is one of the engines on the Polar Bear Express. This is in Cochrane right here at the train station, and we've got all of our gear right here, our sleds, and we're waiting for the train. You can see up a little closer. We've got both skis and then big snowshoes. This train station here, 1910, the tracks and the line, I think, was laid in 1903, so pretty old. And this is Chris here. We're on the train, probably sitting in the train station. That's my other partner, Dave Goodyear, and that's myself. Not many people on the train, obviously. And this is along the tracks. There is a dining car on the train, so you can buy, get a meal. They serve beer on there, so we always enjoy that on the way out. And I think we ride 5 or 6 hours, depending on where we're getting off, which is where we're, oops, sorry about that. It's 3/4 of a day ride all the way up to the ocean, but we don't go up all the way because we get off and then snowshoe. And this is Moose River Crossing or Moose River Station. And this is actually a channel of the Moose River here, a side channel that's blocked off. And that's the Moose River way out there. And we've gotten off the train here and it's leaving, so we're at the station now. And it's where work crews are, and they have quite a bit of stuff going on here depending on the time of year. And so we're assembling our gear here. And those are a lot of cabins here for workers depending on what they're doing up there on the railroad and elsewhere along there. This is Chris Latta. And then this is a map of our first day here, where we went. So we're right there. This is a Canadian map. It's so far north they haven't revised it in so long because there's just not much changes out there, not a lot of topography, and there's not much demand for updated maps. But this is what the really, really old maps. This one's from '73, black and white, and this is a kilometer right here. These squares are kilometers. And so this is the Moose River right here. So we got off right before Murray Island, right here at Moose River Station. And so then we were going to go cross country, across the Muskeg over here. This is Medicine Island. And I mentioned the expedition a few years before this where we got run out of town by that big blizzard. Well, we had worked our way all the way down the Abitibi to the Medicine Island here. I was originally, when we were going to work the trip and get out, we were going to go over to Moose River, but I was mid-thigh with my Alaskan snowshoes right here, so it just wasn't going to be doable because we had sleds with probably 80, 90 pounds of gear. So we ended up heading over this way to an ice roadway over to the, which would be the, over to the southeast that I knew was there, and we hit that. And that worked out pretty good.
So it's only about 5 kilometers. It doesn't seem that far, but you just couldn't get any.
You know, when you 60-inch snowshoes, okay, this big mid-thigh, no pack on. That's just with body weight, and then we have to pull sleds behind us. I mean, it would have been. We had food and provisions to be out there for quite a while more, but it's just. I went up in the bush there, and it's. Because of the type of brush it was, some places it's literally impenetrable with blown down trees and all kinds of tag outers and stuff. So looking at satellite imagery and stuff, I thought we had a better shot going the other way, and we certainly did. And it worked out. It worked out well. So this is our route for the first day right here, and then we camped back in here. And we've left the tracks, and this is the kind of bush we're going through. And then we're coming out into a big open area here on our way over to Medicine Island. This is what a lot of it looks like. And once you get out of the brush and out of the trees, and so we plan a lot of our routes using satellite imagery now, so that we can see this kind of terrain versus the stuff that's impenetrable. In fact, the trip that Todd was on, we were trying to make just, what was it, a kilometer crossing between two rivers, and it got so bad we had to abort that route and change it. And that was downstream of this, so it's you really got to do studying of the maps. And now that we've done several trips up there, we can look at the satellite imagery and say, okay, this route we can do, this one here is going to be really slow and is going to be painful. So, but this is really pretty here. You can see there's one of my partners is way up there, right there.
How tall is this tree?
These trees here, you can just see are scrub, but the ones over there, they're probably 20, 30 foot higher. So there's lots of trees out there, depending on where you are. And this is one of my favorite shots here. where we're making the crossing over to Medicine Island. So this is on the Muskeg here. This isn't on a river. And we're continuing on across, and then we've crossed that big expanse, and we're getting near the Abitibi River, so we're starting to pick up some trees. So I think this is where we camped. Dug in here. That's partner Chris Latta there. That's his tent. You can see our sleds. We've got our sleds turned over so they don't ice. These are the snowshoes we're using here, full size, biggest you can get, 60-inch Alaskans, and then we've got big skis too we use on the river. And that's my shelter there, just basically a tarp tent. Todd uses something very similar that he's made. And then this is Dave Goodyear's tarp tent that he uses. Pretty simple, no floors in them, and just a single wall with some good ventilation. Relatively light, made out of steel nylon, so they're pretty light. This is in the morning now, we're about ready to head out. Well, this trip here, that was a problem on this trip because we only got probably a half-inch or an inch of snow for this whole trip. But usually when you don't get a lot of snow, it's cold. It's clear sky. So the average temp on this was minus 30. So it really pounded us. And I'll back up right now. So this is Chris Latta here. You're going to see a picture at the end. It's funny now, but this is Chris Latta. He's an engineer from down, I think he lives in Traverse City now, doesn't he, Todd? Yeah, so Todd's heard this story too many times, but he came, so he's here. But anyway, Chris Latta, so we're back at the train station, and I don't know, it's got to be 20, 30, 40 below there, and so a lot of people are familiar with Tim Hortons coffee, right? Pretty popular, and so we're all big coffee drinkers, but he's a really big coffee drinker, so we get this really hot water. Hot coffee, you probably know where I'm going with this. So he's got this hot water. We get out of the vehicles. We're at the train station, walking over to the train station, and it's 30 to 40 below. And he takes a sip, and boiling hot water, so the temperature extreme. Anyway, his tooth, he cracks his front tooth, and it comes right out. Now, fortunately, this guy's an animal, as you can tell. He's a good guy to have in the voice, but he won't go with us anymore. He's an ex-rugby player. He's an ex-rugby player, okay, from college. So you know he's into headbutting, right? So he's had some teeth knocked out, and he's had them replaced. But anyway, he takes a sip of his coffee, and his tooth is in his hand. I said, "Oh man, we're 20 minutes before the train leaves, going back into where we probably shouldn't be." So he's tough. So he says, so he goes over to the hardware store and gets some glue. He goes into the hardware store that was open right there. He says, "You got anything that would glue a tooth on?" The guy looks at him. So I don't know what he took. If it was, have you heard the story from him directly? What was it, super glue or?
I don't remember.
Anyway, he picked some kind of glue, and I said, "Man, we're asking for trouble." So he glues that thing in, and obviously it worked for a day or two, and then it came out. But fortunately, there was a post there, so he didn't have pain. But it could have been bad with another tooth. But there'll be a picture of him at the end. After this was a big ordeal, this trip for us. And he's just smiling, really proud. He's on the train with the beer, and his big tooth is missing. And he's all blistered, frostbitten. And anyway, so that's Chris. So, this is Dave Goodyear. He lives down in the Grayling area, and he's a pharmacist and a really handy guy to have around because he knows how to use medicines and stuff. So, and that's another shot of Chris's tent. This is the first night. We're at the morning after our first night. A nice little spot there. It's Chris's setup there. So this is day 2 right here, and this is where we camped last night. So we're going to finish getting over to the river, the Abitibi River. Here's Medicine Island, where we aborted the trip a few years ago, went off into the bush up in here, across the Muskeg to an ice road, and then took that down. And the Cree are so friendly up there, the ones we met, and I mean the working ones and stuff. And we met this is an interesting story. We finally got over there, and then we still had to get out back to the railroad, get out to the Arctic Ocean, and get back to the train. So We skied down the ice road for quite a ways, and we met some of the maintenance crew, and ended up meeting the fellow that has the contract to maintain the whole road. Like him and his 5 brothers live in Moosehead, and they run, you know, a huge construction company to get these contracts. And so it got to the point where we needed to get shoveled. We needed to get out of there, get a ride out of there. And so this guy, he was just talking to me. He says, "Hey, do you have any idea you could contact somebody?" You know, because he had satellite phone. We had a satellite phone too. And I was talking to him about, you know, I needed to get the whole crew out of there, and because it was further than we could go. And he just says, "No problem." He steps out of his truck. He pulls his rifle out from behind the seat. You know, most of them, maybe about half the people up there carry rifles because of polar bears, okay? The other half, I guess they're not concerned or whatever. But anyway, so he pulls the rifle out of the seat, he hands me his keys. This guy didn't even know me. He just hands me the keys to his truck. And then he gets on his satellite phone and talks to his partners, says, "Bring another truck out, pick up." So he brings another pickup out from Moosehead. Just unbelievable hospitality, just to trust some stranger meets out in the woods. Of course, who does that kind of stuff? It causes trouble, but I tell people about that all the time. He was just the nicest guy. And so anyway, so moving along here, so now we're leaving our campsite there, which we're bushwhacking through the bush over to the Abitibi River. Gets a little thicker here, but this isn't bad. This is real manageable. This is nothing like the stuff Todd was trying to take us through. But we could, you can't tell till you get there. I mean, it was just tangled. And it was a long haul, so it just wasn't gonna work. But, so this is Chris, and he's a real character. He was sponsored. He really got into doing stuff with us. So he had started his own adventure page, Lada Expeditions, wasn't it, Todd? And he got sponsors from Hammer Nutrition, and he got Baffin to sponsor him, and a bunch of, and we have some sponsored groups, companies that sometimes give us gear or sell it to us at wholesale, which is nothing unusual for people that spend a lot of time in the bush and guide and stuff. But so I'll get to this story here pretty soon. There's several things that happened to Chris that were real interesting, and the rugby player. But he's tough. He toughed it out. So we're working through the bush here. We're trying to get over to the Abitibi River, over to Medicine Island. This is kind of getting thicker here, which is no big deal. It's just like Canada. And so we're right over to the edge of the Abitibi River. We're still up on the bank. We got to get down onto it, but this is what it looks like here. It's just frozen right up. And obviously there's a lot of that stuff out there are boulders, and a lot of it is ice from before it finally froze up. It would freeze up above, and then it would thaw, and ice would come down and then be locked in place for the rest of the winter. So this is sitting up high here. It doesn't look very high, and it's not that high, but this is the bank right here. It's a cut bank. Obviously the water's real low this time of year. And so we use ropes to lower our gear down in this particular spot. There's so much cut bank, we just lower our gear down with some ropes and then shinny down ourselves. So now we're right on the ice sheet here, and we've come down the river a little, so we're looking upstream. And this is another classic shot here. This is Chris. When he got sponsored by Baffin, they sent him all this gear. So they sent him this nice black windsuit. And Baffin's a big company, right? I mean, it's a good company. And so they sent him this, Arctic suit. It's a wind shell, which we all wear to stop the wind, but no insulation. We wear insulation under it. And it looks, it's a pretty darn cool suit. And and then they talked him into these boots, and they're 3-pin boots. I didn't want him to have 3-pin boots because we don't do any telemark skiing. We're all just shuffling on ice, and we don't need them, and the foot doesn't flex. So we wear like Native American style mucklucks with double felt liners in them. And so anyway, this suit, after 2 days, it was like in tatters because wherever they had it made overseas, probably how many people sew in here or do some sewing? But you got to stay back from the seam, right? And they sewed this thing about an 1/8 inch from the edge of the seam, and it wasn't. So anyway, I always stay 3/8 or a 1/2 inch, and then I zigzag it. Anyway, so they sewed way too close to the seam. So obviously this thing hadn't been field tested, and the pockets were blowing out, the seams were blowing out, the poor guy, wind was coming in. And so then you'll see later on, he had a few blisters because these are their, the boots, they're 3-pin boots, and they're meant for Arctic expeditions. And you know, they're good boots for what they do, but they don't flex. And so anyway, he got these monstrous blisters, poor guy. And you'll see some of those later on. And there's his hammer. I don't know how he thawed that out. That was froze solid, but he probably had it in his pocket. But he still had fun. So this is on the Abitibi River here. We're working our way down along the river. And this is in this case, I think this is, I'm not sure, I think this is probably Dave's setup. Do you recognize it, Todd? Yeah, that's, he's heating, you know, boiling. We got, all of our water comes from melted snow. And we also, the cheese and anything else is just froze rock hard. If it's got any moisture in it, so he's thawing them out there. And this, I don't know who took this. It's probably Chris Latta took this shot. And I didn't say in the beginning, there's all three of us, myself, Chris Latta, and Dave Goodyear contributed photos. So these aren't all my photos. And so I don't think this is mine, but I don't really care. Anyway, it's a beautiful shot shooting out of because most of us are in our tarp tents, you know, we get the doors open because there's a, you know, room with a view, we love it, and we sleep with bivy sacks. But so this is pretty interesting. And this is my shelter here. The sun is rising on the other side of the river, and this is kind of what it looks like where we are. It looks pretty nice, but the only problem is deep cold, and that eats at you. Another view, probably looking upstream, and this is out of my shelter, and this is looking upstream, and that's Chris Latta's tent there he had. And you can see we've some of our tracks down there. We were using the expedition guide. We were using Weber bindings, and I can't remember the guy's a big expedition, but he made his own Arctic bindings for a while, and we got hold of a few sets of them. So that's what we're using. So there you can wear any boot in them, but we wear. How many people are familiar with Steiger mucklucks or Steiger mucklucks? Yeah, we use those, but we cut off the canvas and we sew on breathable nylon, very loose, so we can get in, and then we double up the liners. We use like 18 millimeters of liners. So two of the felt packs that go in boots everyone's familiar with. You see around UP, we use 2 of those plus an insole underneath to keep our feet warm. And they're flexible. They're like slippers. They're pretty light, and they work good on skis, just for shuffling. And so we can switch between skis and snowshoes at will. And you can see we're tucked right in on a little edge right here. And I learned a good lesson on this river. The other thing that happened upstream on the expedition we had to abort, there's a hydro dam way upstream on the Abitibi. And so, you know, it's a problem with overflow and stuff. And so, This situation here was good, but upstream, so you could see there was further up. It was really noticeable. But so the river ice was like this. It was up high when the river water's high, and then it collapses. The ice along the shore hangs up on the shore, and of course midstream the ice falls down. Okay, it's much lower. I mean, maybe 5-10 feet. So I think, well, you know, we don't want to get caught in an overflow in the middle of the night if they release some water, so we go up high on the edge of the ice, you know, and there's these big cracks up there and stuff, and so we stick our skis in there and poles to rig our tarps and stuff, thinking, oh God, it was my plan, we're a genius, we're above any water that's gonna flood the river, right? The only problem was there's no cracks in the ice out on the river, so when the water rises, it can't rise, so it comes up to the edge and goes through the cracks. And so I wake up and I got water in my you know, it's got water on the ice. Oh my God! And so. So on this trip, we made sure we weren't on ice, but I'll never forget that. And this is another shot of our little campsite here, tucked in up against the bank. And so on this trip, we're cold camping. We have, I think we probably all had white gas stoves, MSR expedition stoves, and we didn't have any fires or anything. It was total cold camp. And to get wood here, you gotta, this river isn't too bad, but walk on the Moose River, it's like being, you almost have to use ropes to get off the river and get up into the woods in many places because it's so steep. It's 20 or 30 feet, and you gotta hoist the sleds. Like here, if you want to do sleds up there, you'd have to hoist them. This isn't as bad, but it's, in certain places, it's very difficult to get wood. That's Dave there having breakfast in his shelter there. That's Chris, he's not looking real happy, but he's getting along. And this is, okay, this is another little life lesson we had. This is Chris's sled, and he was sponsored, and he had a class following him because his girlfriend was a teacher. So he was using satellite technology every day to update the class, all right? And of course, and then he had a big social media following, and he's using, what kind of technology was it you ever used? Was it inReach?
Early inReach.
Yeah, an early inReach. Okay, so you can see here, and I'm all for all this stuff, but, so here's his yeah, did he have it hung up? Yeah, there it is right there. He's got it on Snowshoe. We are technology boys, right? We're with it, okay? And so now he's got it on his sled here, and going through some juice because he's communicating and stuff. Well, the problem was the early inReaches, the jack they had for plugging it in, charging it and everything, it wasn't designed well, and he put it in wrong and he bent all the prongs. So there was no way of charging it. And he's got all of our loved ones are all following us through the wood, on this journey up here. And that unit is, fortunately, it had enough juice in it, you could update everyone and say, hey, this is gonna stop working. You're not gonna hear from us again. But they've had people who have dropped those up in, out in the bush and pick families following them, and they're not moving for 3 days. They send a rescue crew out because they lost, the person has lost the unit. And my concern is when people are following you and they expect to get updates, if they don't, they're going to overreact and all kinds of problems. So anyway, that's the problem we had here. So that brought that to a screeching halt in a day or two. But fortunately, you could put the word out that what was going on. And that's Chris there in his bathing suit. And you can see he's got his 3-pin boots with the real high and they're super stiff. He's already got blisters, so he's not a happy camper. And so now we're the next day here, we're going down to an unnamed island. You can see there's all kinds of channels and stuff, so if it's windy or something, we can tuck back in these channels in here, and we can always, try and find something out of the wind or something. So, moving along, here's some overflow here, which is real common. I told you about it. This trip was so cold that we had no unfrozen. We could go anywhere. There was never any unfrozen overflow, but you could see when it was warmer the overflow. So we were really lucky. And some of these trips we get on different rivers, and we have to totally change rivers or change the route because there's just overflow everywhere. People familiar with what happens with overflow? So what you got is, in this case here, you got open water, but it freezes right away. But where you can't see it up in here, it may be under 6 inches of snow or a foot of snow, and it doesn't freeze. So you're snowshoeing along or skiing, and if you cross-country skiers who hit lakes or beaver ponds and get slush on there, and if it's even 0 or 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 below, it just freezes instantly. And then you got a half hour of scraping, and your snowshoes may weigh like 50 pounds or something. So in this case, we didn't have to deal with that. We were lucky, but we had to deal with the brutal cold all the time in the wind. And this is myself here, and you can see our breath, how it frosts up, and it's just, and I'm sure all you folks here living in the UP when it's really cold, you go out and you feel your eyelashes freezing. And if you have a beard or whatever, any kind of facial hair, you've had it, freeze up. So that's just part of being up north. And it got so bad for me in terms of, because we don't have fires or we don't have hot tents, so we're living in the cold. So I had so much ice on my beard, I ended up just cutting my beard off to get rid of the ice because it was just big icicles. In terms of thawing, you can put your hand on it and thaw it, but it takes a long time to melt that. And since we didn't have any auxiliary heat, I ended up just cutting off the chunks. It's Chris, we're stopped for lunch. Put on our fat suits. We all have big suits like that are made by various companies. They're basically sleeping bags, walking sleeping bags. That's how we exist whenever we're not moving. And there's some interesting snow formations here on the ice. I think Chris took that, he got down low, kind of some neat shots here. And you can see that's ice shards there from earlier in the year when the ice froze up and then it thawed, or there was a huge release of water upstream and it broke the river up and floated them down, and they hung up. And that's what a lot of this is underneath the drifted snow here, or those are boulders, or a combination of both. You can see here.
Here's kind of an example, some of the ones we saw, I don't think you got any pictures in there, but on our trip, you could see the big kettle that was open, and there was boulders sitting in the middle, so the ice came down on the boulder.
Yeah, just like, imagine a stump out on a pond and it freezes up. Okay, a beaver pond, say, in the middle of the winter, the ice freezes up, this is what Todd's talking, it freezes up even with the stump. And then for whatever reason, the beaver pond loses all its water and the ice goes down, and then the stump just kind of protrudes up and busts the ice up. So that's probably, this one probably came downstream, but we may have some photos of that, I'm not sure. But that's what he's talking about. This is what I was dealing with personally. I was cutting off my beard because in my mustache to get rid of this ice from time to time because it was too much of a hassle. And this is Chris Latta here. This is a bad night for him. He's sleeping out, and I heard some movement in the middle of the night about 2 o'clock, and he's up firing his stove up, and he's so cold he's heating water. Sometimes we heat water bottles and put the hot boiling water bottles in our sleeping bags to warm them up, and that's what he's doing. He got somebody's, I'm not going to mention any names, a manufacturer kind of overhypes their gear, and they sold him this bag that was supposed to not ice, and it's supposed to work anywhere in the world, and it was a mess, and so he was suffering.
Did his tent fail too, or did he just not feel like putting it on?
No, his tent didn't fail. It was I don't think he felt like putting it up because it's brutal when it's really cold. After several hard days, it gets worse and worse. So he just didn't put it up, and he may have, I don't know if we were getting weather reports back then or not, but his inReach would have been down, so I think he was just roughing it. Well, you can see here, this is Dave. He's working his stove here. We're using that's probably, is that an XGK or what's the other?
Dragonfly
Maybe a Dragonfly, yeah, I don't think he had it. Anyway, he's working his stove and stuff and wearing his mitts, and you can see his headgear is all frosted up because it's brutal cold. It's kind of a neat shot with the lighting and stuff. This is my setup here. And this would be in the morning then. It's boiling up in the shelter, melting snow. All of our water comes from melting snow. This is kind of a few shots. There's Chris. He's kind of just hanging out. You can see it snowed a little bit that night. Pretty good moving along here. So,
Question.
yes.
How do you stay hydrated throughout the day? How are you
Oh.
maintaining water above freezing so that you can?
Just like when we're backpacking, we use Nalgene bottles, but then we put them inside half-inch to inch thick insulation. And then when it's this cold, we start out with boiling water. So at the end of the day, late in the afternoon, they may just start to slush up. And then one of them is buried in the sled, so that's further insulation. The other one is right on our waist belt, so we can drain it regularly. And then at lunch we don't get stoves out at lunch because it's very time consuming. And our hour lunch has been turned into a 2-hour lunch, so we carry thermoses with boiling water so we can have hot soup and stuff, or whatever anyone wants to have. So this is, you bet. Anybody has any other questions, just interrupt me. So we're working our way down the river. A lot of these islands aren't named. And go along the edge. It's looking like it's a little windier here, a little more snow blowing around. You can see it blowing around in the distance there. there aren't a lot of shots when the weather is really bad because I don't take pictures then, because it's, hard
Those
on.
fish scale skis?
Yeah, we're all no wax, right.
Get it cold enough so that it turns into sand and not like.
We didn't, we had, they worked real well. I'm not I skied full year in the woods, but I'm not a cross-country skier, so you're asking the wrong guy. Some of our skis, we tune them for the sled, the weight we're pulling to attraction, like I've actually, with a plane, I've actually increased some of my skis, I've increased the kick zone way out towards the tip and the tail, so that I get just enough traction with the sled that I'm pulling, because I'm not carrying a heavy pack to flatten them out. And we usually use metal edge skis, so when we get onto really sheer ice, we've got a little edge, but we don't do any downhill skiing. Because it's, one fall out there, you break your legs, so this is just more efficient than snowshoeing, and we're sliding along. And you can see, we haven't hit any snowmobile trails yet, because the Cree don't come up this river at all for whatever reason. They've got other areas they go, but eventually you'll see some snowmobile trails, and then they're packed hard. Oops, that's a wolf track there, kind of in reverse. You've probably seen folks have been out in the woods and the animal walks through the snow, packs it down hard, and then the snow melts
So that's raised for
differently around it, and it ends up being raised. That's a wolf track. And we were following a timber wolf for several days coming down the river. That's Chris again. We're just kind of moving along the river, getting further down. Now, right here is a narrow spot, a narrow river. This is one of the channels behind one of the islands, kind of a nice area to go. You can see it's nice hard pack. We still got good traction with the skis. And that's myself there, that's my setup there, tarp. Little frost problem. A little red face, I got a little burn there, probably from the wind and the cold and the sun, all three combined. And this would be, oh, that's Chris, okay, he's not smiling, but he's there. And looks like this, that's probably a sunrise, yeah. And now we're almost down to back to the confluence here of the Moose River and the Abitibi. This is Allen Rapids, and there's a whole bunch of islands here. A lot of people have drowned there. I've been warned by the locals to watch out, because we have to deal with rapids. I've spent a lot of time around rapids and stuff negotiating them, so I'm pretty good at it, but still, when the locals tell you where people can die, you pay attention. So you'll see it on the next day, but this is where we camped. So this is, we've just gotten up here and we're working our way down. You can see we're getting a little bit higher quality map, because this is probably for Moosonee, and so there's Moose Factory Island and Moosonee, and there's a lot going on there, so they've updated that map. In fact, I think, let me go back here. This is where I mentioned Todd was, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but Todd has been up here. We've been up here together, and I think it was the Cheap Ash River where we started, right? We got off the railroad here. Right, so Todd, this is where Todd is going to develop some is familiar with this here. I think we came up Allen Rapids and ways, and then took a flood channel over up here. So that's where, and Todd's we're going back next year. Todd's gonna be there, and Dave will be there, but not Chris. He sold all of his gear. So we're still friends, but
He doesn't take your calls?
no, I don't call him. He's young. He got married as a child, so he's happier than heck. Yeah, he does all kinds of adventure sports and stuff. So he's good. We got one good trip out. We got a lot of good trips up until this one. Finished them off, and we don't see him anymore. So okay, so there. So that's Chris. Now you can see he's taking a picture, but he's not smiling. He's got some issues. And I'll show it to you later. We all have issues, okay? We all took a beating. I didn't take a real bad beating because I've done it so much. I didn't have the blisters, I didn't have the frostbite, but it was brutal cold. So here we probably took a break at one of the channels, and that's how cold it is today there. That's me. And, but that's par for the course. I mean, when it's 20 or 30 below around here, anybody who goes out skiing probably comes back looking like that. Oh, Jennifer. So this is, we're working our way down the river. In fact, someone asked about you can see that red pouch right in the back there. That's a bottle parka. Keep the water from freezing. Now we're getting further down here near we're coming up on Allen Rapids, and you can see these are big ice flows right here that just came when the river broke up earlier in the year. It just slammed it down here, and it's jammed it all up against these islands and along rocks. So some of it gets a little bit dangerous because you can see there's ice here, and then you get 2 feet of snow in there and drifts, so you got all these mini crevasses and stuff. And actually, in fact, it was the trip the top was leading for us breaking through. I broke a set of snowshoes on that because I fell into a little crevasse, basically just an unsupported area, and it was supported by ice, but then it wasn't, and it broke the shoes. We just, they're wood shoes, so we just cut a sapling. We got lashing cord, lash them up, and Todd's he's our MacGyver, so we just fix it and go, and they last the rest of the trip. So you can see we've got some wind here a little bit.
What's the advantage of the white suit?
The white suit is, there's really no advantage to the white. In fact, it's a disadvantage because it gets dirty and you look like you're a bum. But the issue, it's hard to get this kind of gear. These are wind suits, single layer supplex, just nylon, windproof. And so it's stuff they sell for hunters and for the military, and so that's where we got them, how we got them, because it's really hard to get that kind of gear that's designed for this. It's not overbuilt. In fact, it's funny you ask about that. Mine got so dirty. I met a guy up on a solo expedition up in Canada. I was up in the bush, and I met this guy that just lived out there as a trapper, and whatever. And he had a white camouflage Canadian suit on, from the Canadian Army. It was white, and it was like black on the front because he had just lived out there for years and couldn't afford anything else. And I looked at it and said, that looks bad. And then I looked at my suit. It wasn't anywhere near that bad. But I got to deal with, recruiting people to come back on trips, and so I quit using it for several years. And then I just learned, a woman came on our trip who was a professional organizer and cleaner and stuff, and so she told us how to clean these suits. So I just have been soaking mine in this concoction of super strength cleaners at home in a bucket. So I'm going to use it on our next, actually it's this Friday, we're going on a 5-day trip. And it really did work, so it makes me look like, I'm kind of clean again. So it's really a problem. But it's really hard to get those kind of windsuits that are really simple without many zippers and pockets and linings and all that other stuff. So, and they're not made anymore, so they're tough to get. And they're nylon, they're not cotton. A lot of the military stuff is cotton, and it's a real problem if you don't have auxiliary heat because it gets wet, it soaks up a lot of moisture. So there's Chris, he's a little frosted up. We're working our way down into Allen Rapids. That's Dave, myself. And we gotta wrap this up here. And this is an interesting shot out on the river. I think it was, must have done something with the camera lens because it's interesting how it's curved. And this is, Chris he's got his snowshoe here as our big, these are the crease snowshoes, the pointed ones, and he just has his emergency blanket over it, he's hunkered down in there. That's where he's spending the night. I'm so darn cold, I've been so tired of getting cold, I'm starting to dig a snow shelter now at night. So this is a trench shelter. We just dig a trench, and then we lay, in this case I probably laid the poles that I pull my sled with, I probably put my snowshoes in there, my skis, laid a tarp over it, and then shoveled out a bunch of snow. And then I probably have a double door there, so I have a thermal door. And this is in the morning, so that's where I slept that night. And I think Dave dug in too. That's Chris. I don't think he had the energy to dig in. There's Dave. You can see he did the trench shelter. You can see here's the wall, and then you can see a ski here, and the tip of his snowshoe right here laid across, and you can see the black, he had a tarp laid across the top, and then he piled on 6 inches of snow to make a thermal roof. And so he's sitting right there. That's where he's eating along the edge of the river. And this is poor Chris. He's gotten a little too much cold, got some, big blisters on his hands. So that's why he's not smiling too much. Poor guy. And he just probably didn't. He went on he went on trips with us before. He was up in Canada, but this was, go ahead.
I have a question, sorry. I was curious about you guys saying Iron Man, and what was the rating of your bag, the kind of material, what your ground pads were, and because you just showed it, how much warmer were you in your shelters?
Well, most of us use double bags. Like I was using a North Face 40 below Dark Star synthetic, but they don't make it anymore, so I just switched. I'm just switching over to down, which I've avoided for 35 years because of the problems on long trips with icing. All the moisture you're putting out of your body every night, it's more and more and more. Well, in a synthetic bag, the ice, what happens is you're perspiring, it's a vapor, okay? And so right inside the bag against you, it's reasonably comfortable, it's warm. And so your insensitive perspiration comes out, and any moisture in your ear, your drying goes into your insulation, and then it migrates along as a vapor, and then it condenses, okay, into a liquid. And then it migrates a little further until it hits the frost line, and then it freezes in your bag, okay? So every night you're pouring in, there's an Arctic expeditions, they discard bags that may weigh 30 pounds because they're so iced up. And so that's a problem. So anyway, last year I switched over because I need a new bag because my loft is off. So I bought this, like the world's warmest bag, 60 below, what's the snowy all, right? I think it is. And the best down you can get, and I'm finally gonna, all these years I wouldn't let anyone bring down because it's, for moisture. So I thought I'm gonna try and see if I was right, So I went to the Porkies for 7 days with it, and it started out like 12 to 14 inches of loft. I mean, this is a monster bag, okay? When I got done, what was it, down to 8 or 10? It was still warm, but man, it killed it. So this year I've treated it with a waterproofer. They make a waterproofer for down so it doesn't absorb so much moisture. According to the company, I don't think it's going to help too much, but I'm going to find out this year. We're using usually double bags. We make over bags. So like over that Dark Star on this trip here, I would have had another 3 inches of loft on top of the Dark Star. And I'm probably going to have to do that with my down bag, put a synthetic bag over it so all the moisture migrates past the down and freezes in the synthetic bag. So it's a problem. The longer you're out, the tougher it gets. I mean, we have to bring stuff sacks for our sleeping bags that are twice the size that they come with from the factory because they get so icy, you can't get them in there because they're all iced up. And then when you take them out, you got to pull them apart kind of because they're frozen. So that's a problem. Most of us use, because we're moving every day and it's so cold, we're not hot kids. We don't have hot tents. Most of us use foam pads. I don't really like people bringing inflatable pads because, can you imagine trying to fix an inflatable pad at 40 below? I mean, you can do it, it can be done, but I just don't need those kind of issues. So we use probably an inch of foam under us, works good.
So if there's people that live there, what do they do that they can teach you to stay warm?
Well, they heat with wood. They use their head.
Yeah, but they don't always stay inside. I mean, they're out and about. So what do they?
Well, they're using basically the same. They're using multiple. You probably heard. Layer like an onion. Add and subtract layers to adjust for whatever the temperature is. That's what we're doing. That's what they're doing. But they're using moose hide. They're using canvas. and stuff like that. The problem with that is you have to have a fire, or you have to go into a hot tent or a warm cabin to de-ice it usually, and it's heavy. And so, I mean, we're carrying a monster load already, so we're using modern gear to cut the weight down, because we're not really expeditioners. It's a lot of, we train hard for this stuff, and it's a lot of work. So we do learn from them, and we just use modern, instead of using canvas, anorex, instead of using wool, things like that, you know, we're using microfibers. So they're a lot lighter, and they still handle moisture. Now, if I had to be out there and survive for a long time, I would love to have the natural stuff, the wool and that, because it would last longer and serve better around the fire. But, so here we are. This is, we got one more night here. So this is where we've camped. Here's Allen Rapids right here, and these are some of the deadly spots right here where, you know, we ended up taking this channel right over here, and it worked out really well. I think when when we came down the Cheapash, we went over here, and I think we came up, didn't we go back into
We
here?
came right around the hook from Baby Island there, and we went past the cabin.
Yeah.
And we went upstream right away.
Oh, okay.
Out there, and then we,
Yeah.
I'm not sure which side of Allen Island we went though.
Yeah, and then we ended up going way over in here.
Yeah.
So, we could get moving along here. If anyone wants to leave, feel free to. It's 8 o'clock. We're going over a little here. So I'll move this along here. There's a tooth that's gone. But he's smiling, because we're getting close to the train. Time to go home. And, see, we're working, yeah, we're still in Allen Rapids here, working our way down. Headed for the Moose. Here we're looking across the Moose River. At this point, some places the river's like a mile and a half wide. So it's, because we're on the Moose, that collects up a tremendous number of rivers and amount of water. So we're cutting across the Moose now, going down, and we're gonna, sun's setting a little low, and now here we're digging in again. This is, I'm not sure whose shelter. That's Chris right there, so that's probably his shelter, and mine's probably gonna be right back in here where I'm standing. We're up on the bank of the river. This is the Moose River out here, Mighty Moose.
What do you estimate the temperature difference was between sleeping in the snow cave and you know, your target shelters?
Well, if it's properly, I've slept in them when it's been 80 below, but if it's built properly, are you familiar with snow shelter? Yeah, exactly, the Quincy, you know, yeah, it's, if you can excavate them down to the earth, so you have the soil, you probably know around here sometimes in the dead of winter, if you dig down in the snow, you find out the ground's not even froze, right? Well, that means it's, by definition, 32 degrees or a little bit more. Well, that seems cold. When it's 80 below or 50 below out, that is warm, that's heat. And so the idea with the snow shelter is it's capturing, if it's built right, insulated right, like an inverted styrofoam cup, it's catching your body heat. If you have a candle in there, it's catching that heat. It's also catching the heat that's always emanating from the earth, which one would think would be really cold, and it is, but when it's really, really cold out there, that's can make a huge difference. So I don't really know. I've used them before, and they maintain like 20, if they're sealed right, built right, maintain 20 above, even when it's 40 or 50 below out, if they're built right. And and I've used them in Canada when it's been 50 below. I just got tired of sleeping at 50 below, so as I moved the next night, I just built a snow shelter, and it was quite nice. So, but it's a bit of work to build one. So this is the Moose River here. This is, you can see, this is my shelter here. It's getting dark, so I'm digging a shelter here, and I've covered it with my gear. And there's where I'm sleeping, and I probably have a door there that I hang down. We use double doors, like big contractor garbage bags. The contractors use those huge ones. We carry the two of those, and we put pigtails on the ends, two corners of two of them. And then they're real easy to hang. And you hang them about 12 inches apart, so you got a thermal door, and then you stack your gear in between them, okay? Or you could fill one of those garbage, like with a Quincy, you could fill one of those garbage bags up with snow and you pull it in as a plug, right? Is that how you sealed yours, or did you
We
make it?
did it was a workshop, and demo.
Yeah.
We kept the door open.
Yeah, even then though, there still makes a huge difference.
And
But
with
you
only
could-
one person, then you have that key.
Yeah, so, so I probably had a thermal door on there, if I wasn't too tired to build it. I mean, I may have been too tired to rig it. And this is, you can see, this is the Moose Factory Island. We're getting close to town. We can see in the distance there, down the river, the glow from the lights. And that was interesting. I don't know who got that or how we got it, but it looks pretty cool. So anyway, that's the night there. You can see some trees here out. So this is probably from my shelter, or it might be, Chris might be taking this. And this is the morning, the sun rising here. And this is, there's another shot from inside one of our shelters with the doors open, coming up. Probably different people took these. That's a pretty nice one there. I imagine Chris took that.
What's the photography like? Special cameras?
We're using just small point and shoot, good ones, you know. We don't have any, now we're starting to use with smartphones and stuff, we're really getting some good photographs with those, although that remains to be seen how they're gonna work, Todd, right? At 20 or 40 below, we're gonna have to keep them warm. But, I think I have just a good high quality point and shoot. Well, what we do is we have, again, if anyone wants to leave, just get up. I understand, because these things go on. What we have is, we wear a harness around our neck, just a piece of 1-inch webbing like that, and then we have these huge, what we call plunge mitts. You might have seen the ones Dave had, he was cooking. You can't do anything with those mittens on except stay warm, okay? And then they're hooked onto the harness, so when we need to do something, we just shake them off, and they hang right here. And then we have fingerless gloves on and maybe glove liners. And then what I tell people is you got about 20 or 30 seconds to do whatever you want to do with your hands, okay? And then they're not functional, you put them back in your plunge mitts and warm them up. You think about what you want to do next. And then you time it. That's why everything has to be super simple, not complex, because if it's very complex, you're going to have real problems. And you're going to probably have a big blister like Chris had on his hand there. So this is the morning, this is one of, this would be Chris's shelter, because that's his shovel there. That's where he slept there, spent the night. That's me coming down the bank from my shelter up there, and we're skiing, so I've left the snowshoes on my sled, and I just probably jettisoned the skis and let them come down on the ice. But the problem is getting down there, it's very deep. So that's what I'm sinking in. You can see I got my fat suit on, trying to stay warm before we start moving. So here's the final day. We've camped here, and we're gonna come down. Now this Quattawahagan Rapids is where the tidal waters come in from the Arctic Ocean, and they meet the Moose River. And on one of my first, like my second or third expedition up here, I started, I had a point and shoot camera, and I was shooting all kinds of video. I didn't realize that I'd chewed through all my batteries. So when I got down to here, I didn't have any camera left, but down here, it's like a 3-story building where the ice from upstream meets the tidal waters, and it just piled up ice, like kind of like you see out, just massive piles, and I don't have any picture of it. And this year there's always ice there, but it wasn't piled up. So and so then what we did is we went up this tributary right here. We got the Arctic Ocean. We went up here. I can't remember this. Yeah, Quattawahagan River. We went up and we jumped the train right here. So we're down on the ice. Here's Chris probably waiting for me to get squared away. He's down there just hanging out. It's cold. And now where you can see some snowmobile tracks here. This is where the creek come up here to fish and trap, so they bust some trails. So we're skiing in their tracks. And now we're going up to Quattawahagan Rapids, and we're at the tracks here. We finally made it to the tracks, and we're waiting for the train. The Arctic Ocean is up this way, and Moosonee, this is where the train turns around up here and comes back to to civilization, so we're waiting for it. And this is one of the bridges up here, and this is the plaque here, was built in 1931. The original tracks were put through in 1903. So here's Chris, we're on the train, okay, he is smiling again, okay? And because he's, you know, like most guys, like a beer, so he's probably got a beer there. He's proud, he's accomplished it, he's done it, he's finished it. And here's one of his blisters. Can you imagine walking every step with that? That's at the end of the trip. Probably it's in pretty good shape now. There's some black down here. I don't know if you got a little frostbite there, but we took a beating, but we didn't lose any. My rule is we don't want to lose any toes, any fingers, or any facial skin, and I think we succeeded. So that's it. I want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to have our next talk is going to be on March 22nd. We're going to talk about man tracking, just kind of a fun discussion of how man tracking works for whether it be our soldiers out there, our special forces people, or SWAT officers, or people at Marquette County Search and Rescue like Todd. Hopefully Todd will be here. He can lend some input to that, because that's what he does. He trains twice a month. So that's it. So I hope to see you. I appreciate you coming tonight. If you're interested in man tracking, we'll have that on March 22nd in this room here. Any questions? Feel free to ask. Go ahead.
Do you carry any communal gear, or is each person on their own?
We're pretty much on our own, but everybody shares everything. Like we pool all of our first aid kits. We may have a satellite phone that's communal, but generally not, because these are free trips. Okay, so people come and go. I mean, they may be in the planning for months, and then all of a sudden their job schedule changes. Or like I've had my longtime partner. One time I was on an expedition. We get up in Canada, and he gets a call his father's died, so he's got to leave. So I found it for what I do. People can come and go and not disrupt the trip. You don't lose any critical stuff. You can evacuate someone, and if people want to bring luxury items, heavyweight, they can bring it, they can haul it. So it is rather unorthodox the way I run them, but they're free trips, and everybody is pretty much an accomplished solo tripper on their own, So we're just kind of like people that do stuff on our own coming together as a group, and we're a pretty strong group, and we have a pretty good time. It usually works. Now, it would be, we could travel a little bit lighter by taking some more communal gear, but that's kind of how we do it. Good question, though.
What's the way you may mention?
Oh,
You got heavier, that sounds good.
no, well, we eat through food, so it gets lighter in that regard. It's probably easier 100 pounds. I usually have 3 pounds of food a day, so that's so for 10 days, that's 30 pounds, and then fuel. I usually carry about 10 ounces of white gas a day, so that's 2 pounds for 3 days. So it's not light, but we're not going in the mountains, because I couldn't haul that stuff that way, So, but we do pretty good, and we do a lot of stuff up in Lake Superior Provincial Park, in the North Shore, Lake Superior, and we manage pretty good with our sleds to do a lot of elevation right, Todd? We work a lot of canoe routes up in Canada using the portage trails that you guys use when you're canoeing, and the lakes and river routes. So yeah, it's hard. Most of us train. Todd's young. He was born strong, so he's still got that. And but I got to train every day, and now he does a lot of our trail breaking. He's up front, and he's also an excellent navigator. So he's a perfect person to have on point. He can bust a trail, and he can chop, move stuff. He's got the energy to bust through a lot of saplings where it gets fatiguing, as you get older. So, and he's just an expert navigator. He's a top shelf navigator. So he's up front. So I do a lot of sweeping now. That means I'm like maybe 3, 4, 5 people back. So I have the trails beat down a little bit, right? And lost gear, but that doesn't happen because our crew's pretty squared away, they don't drop much. And, but it's a team effort, you know, and I'm gonna be 70, you know, in October, so I'm happy to still be able to do it. And have people like Todd that, you know, got full of energy, and so we can do it. Any other questions? Anybody have? Go ahead.
In the ballpark, what your caloric demand is and how many calories you're wanting to hit per day to fuel you and like how you, what that looks like.
Boy, I keep records on that. It's probably 5,000 to 8,000, depending, because I used to do a lot of long distance expeditioning, so it was way up there. And, I mean, I used to haul 5 liters of water to get through my day because I was going for a long time. Now I'm down to 3, I can do it with 2 2-liter bottles in a thermos. But, you know, because I'm not traveling as many hours, so I'm sure my caloric intake, have you figured yours, Todd?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's a lot of calories. I mean, my breakfast probably is 1,500 calories. You know, big, a lot, it's a lot of calories because we're just working hard. And especially, this trip was relatively easy because you saw there's not much deep snow on the river. But our stuff up in Canada, like around Lake Superior, and this kind of snow where you have maybe 5, 6 feet of snow, and we're sinking 1.5 foot when we get elevation, we're tremendous amount of calories. And sometimes there we rotate point, you know, a person will break till they get tired, another person will sweep up. And Todd doesn't get tired too, not to do that much. He might just get, I've had enough of this, these guys are slacking in the back. Yeah, exactly. One of the trips we got in like early in the afternoon, and it was Chris and Todd and Matt Acker, Matt Acker like wins these, what's the bike race over here in Ishpeming? Yeah, he like wins that thing. That's, because he doesn't trip with his either, because he got tired of sitting around in the morning. Because he's like a go guy. But, so these 3, they went up on Peak Mountain, you know, from, you know, in Lakes Group Adventure Park, we were down on the lake and they had time, so the 3 of them just took off and went up there. So,
You didn't go in the hall.
no, I had nothing adventure. And, and I think, I don't know if that was that the trip we had to evacuate someone with the helicopter?
Yeah, that was priority.
Yeah, so we go through a lot of calories for sure.
And is it dehydrated? Is it?
Dehydrated, and then, you know, we gotta try and watch the weight buckets, dehydrated jerky, cheese, butter, you know, it's gotta be somewhat palatable, you know, granola and chocolate, you know, all kinds of stuff. Stuff that's, you can eat when it's frozen, other than the stuff that we eat. Anything that, like, most of your granola bars freeze solid, you'll break your teeth, so what we do, you can cut those up with a bandsaw into cubes, and they're, you know, like bouillon, then you can consume those because you can melt them pretty fast in your mouth, and you can kind of crunch them. So, that stuff has to be, or we carry it in our pockets and against our body, and then they're ready to eat a little later on if you plan ahead, so. Any other questions? Jennifer here, who arrived a little later, she's a winter camper with us, and she's going out with us this weekend, so she loves it. She's got a 40 below bag, and so, any other questions? All right.